even people that think they're competitive, it's like, assume that you still have a lot more to learn. Assume that you're closer to the bottom of the totem pole than the top.
You became more serious in strongman. Was it at the same time that you started to dig deeper into the training methodologies?
Yes. I want to say it was probably, I had always read through blogs, granted that's not formal text, right? Yeah. But I had always had my finger on the pulse of what people were saying. I read the Elite FTS blog way back in the day. Even bodybuilding.com had forums and had articles and stuff. Even occasionally Muscle and Fitness, they would have a feature from a Mark Filippi type or somebody. Yeah. And all the guys that wrote the articles had the letters after their names. So they were kind of doing that, right? Taking what exercise science had to say and funneling it through the lay person's vocabulary so that it made sense. So I had collected so many magazines. As soon as I found out Powerlifting USA was a thing, I started collecting those. Milo, Strength Journal, started collecting those. So I was reading all along. I think I really started doing deep dives to try to really get my head wrapped around the training stuff, probably around the time I got the gym. Because you have a gym, people are asking you for programming. What are you going to do? Are you going to fill it in with whatever the fuck pops into your head? Or are you going to at least pretend to have a method, a system, something reproducible and predictable? And I wanted to have that. And it's like, okay, well, let's take everything you think you know and then go compare it against the outside world and see what you come up with. And that's having to actually go that route to try to organize those ideas. That's where okay, you think you have an idea of how things fit together, but when you start reading these programs, you get nothing but questions. There's nothing but, because shit isn't explained all the way through, at least not in the sense of how do you take this and act on it immediately? Because the first step you take, there's well, this wasn't explained. The next step you take, it's okay, there's these percentages. I remember trying to run percentage-based programs that the college coaches gave me. And it's oh, this is the real inside scoop. This is how you train. And I remember going through it and I'm like, yeah, but these sets aren't hard. I must be doing something wrong, and that wasn't explained. That something like RP effort, where does that come in? Should you be shitting your pants every time you do a working set of squats? Or is there a purpose? Is there a reason that it's backed off a little bit? Is it, what's under the hood? All the total sets and reps, all the skill work and how that matches up with the next week and then the next block. And it's something that's not quite obvious. So that was, mid to early 2010s, I got into that. And again, it was just more reading, more hearing what other people had to say. There's a couple pieces of work that I got my hands on that I think were really influential, that shed a lot of light on stuff. Boris Shako's textbook, I recommend everybody pick that up because the way he programs, it's Olympic lifting applied to powerlifting. Russian master of sport came up in that field, was a successful Olympic lifting coach, uses those methods, treats barbell work as skill work. Very complex, probably not appropriate for the average trainee, but it's certainly viable for people willing to figure it out. But it was one of the first times I saw an elaborate periodized program with thorough explanation, citations, examples, and you can go through and just 100 examples. You could go through and see, oh, this is why it's arranged that way. This is what they're looking at. This is why some workouts are big and some are small. This is why some weeks are big and this is why some are small. It's not the just go harder than last time. It's not the, well, you got a PR or you're worthless. It's something that's not quite as obvious that merited explanation, just shed so much light on everything else that's put together. It even helped understand simple shit like linear progressions, a real simple old school shit that does work, but now you have two things to compare. Okay, this is increasing weight and stress over time. Every week is the hardest week of your life if you're doing it right, and this is why it's appropriate for some and not for others. Oh, this one, waves back and forth between skill work and total load and volume, and it dials back. So it was a lot to sink my teeth into. But
you said there were a couple resources. What was it? One of the other ones?
Oh God, from that. Not quite as formal of a book, but Scientific Principles of Strength Training is a really good one. I recommend people pick that up. Again, going line by line, these are, and I like the way Israel talks. Some of his dry, dirty humor is worked in, but it's going a couple of Vegeta references, a couple of bullet points as far as these are the principles that comprise a program. Let's go down each one. I'll explain how important they are, how you can see them match up. And now every time you look at a program, you have a little bit of insight. At least you can take an educated guess at what is a person trying to get at that wrote this, which is going to allow you to run it better and make tweaks better. Like you said, 12-week program, largely bullshit. A big reason these cookie cutter programs are bullshit is because you can't write them for everybody. Yep. It doesn't matter how good I write a program with everybody in mind. If I think about my audience, 10%, 20%, 30% might be displaced because there's some issue they have that it doesn't address, might not be appropriate for them. So no matter what program you run, you are on the hook for getting the right answer. No matter what, you're on the hook for making the tweaks. So these types of resources, and I'm strained to think about ones that put it in as clear-cut of terms as that. But those types of resources can help you make better decisions, which is going to allow you to go farther and not hit a wall where you end up injured or frustrated or being like, what the fuck, why isn't this working?
Yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, I'm seeing three different things that kind of happen here, where the same things kind of happen with myself. So this is probably why I'm seeing this a little bit more clearly. So you're competing in strongman, and all the education you're doing up until this point was low fruit cherry picking just to be able to become better at what you do.
Sure.
So everything you're looking at is through the lens and the bias of, can this help me? How can this help me? And then you start the gym, and then, as with myself, I'm now personal training Gen Pop. Like, I can't do this with these people. They're completely different needs. I have to figure out this whole area. So then you're going down this other deep dive. And for me, it was presenting seminars for Louis and having to provide some clarity. For you, you're putting content out on YouTube. It's like, now I need to be able to have a way to present this to masses that are going to be able to understand in this clear format. So you're diving into content substantially changes. Meanwhile, you're still looking for the best ways for you to become the best strongman. Otherwise, you're probably not doing any of the shit anyhow.
Absolutely, yeah. And having your audience in mind, knowing what they're comprised of is so big, and that probably lends itself to whatever growth I've had on the YouTube channel. But I mean, I trained it at LA Fitness when I was like 18, 19 years old, one of my first training jobs. And when you work with the Gen Pop, it really changes the way you look at things because you're exposed to more limitations. You get a handle of what people miss. What doesn't make sense to people? How is this stuff that seems kind of mysterious? How do you connect that to an easy and digestible set of principles? And the fact is, I mean, you said it when we were talking earlier. It's like, 5% of the viewership or the customer base is like serious competitive lifters. The bottom of that iceberg is going to be people that are trying to get into it, people that have gotten into it, but they're trying to pick up momentum, people that are on the outside. They're very close to that Gen Pop kind of classification. And knowing what that group is made up of, even people that think they're competitive, it's like, assume that you still have a lot more to learn. Assume that you're closer to the bottom of the totem pole than the top, because if you think you're more educated than you are, or you've been around the block more times than you have, it's super easy to miss things, super easy to make assumptions that are wrong, take for granted what you know. And you got to keep sharpening that saw, and it's easiest if you can kind of conceptualize that you do in fact have a lot to learn. But as far as making things digestible, those years, you would think it's not that useful for competitive sports to talk about what's appropriate for a sedentary accountant or somebody who's older, who's never really lifted. But it exposes you to low tolerances. What can people handle? How do you work around these issues? When people don't move around all day, what issues are you going to come up with? And shockingly enough, especially in the West, American culture is American culture. You get people that, people start slapping the word athlete on everything, and you get people, it's like you're strong as shit, but you can't sit in a full squat without your feet rolling in and your knees or whatever it might be. So whether you're doing form checks, trying to get people to understand how their body works, whether you're putting together programming stuff, okay, you can only remember a couple things at a time before you just lose track of the whole picture. So, what 2 or 3 things can I tell people that are going to help them with their program, with their next workout? So that's been immensely helpful. And then with all that stuff, the programming and everything else, it's like you have all these different authorities you're looking towards. So you have the evidence-based stuff. You have actual textbooks. If you want to read super training, because that's the level you're on, good luck to you. Valuable stuff in there, I am sure. But how do you take that and connect it to anything you're doing in real life? Then below that, you're going to have things that are more digestible and more proven. The types of programs that people have ran, explained by the people that wrote them. That's great. And then beyond that, you have, well, what do the other meatheads I compete with have to say? And that was also a very vital learning experience, because you always want to go to the guy that won the meet, that deadlifted 100 pounds more than everybody, or that, set some state log record, or, everybody shit the bed on the last stone and this other guy loaded it for reps. You always want to know, hey, what are you doing? And it's tricky, because for every time that they had some really useful, valuable advice, they had some bullshit that just didn't apply to anybody, because they were built that way, or because they just like to go hard and they grew, or because you get fast gainers. You get quick responders who get strong if they look at a barbell, and those guys rise to the top very quick. So getting a sense of what is likely to work for somebody, depending on whether it's their genetics or experience or their psychology, whatever it is, that was a huge point that I tried to draw lines on. It's like, yeah, your favorite lifter does this, but let me explain why that's probably not going to be in your best interest.